You know, when we think about the air war in World War I, our minds immediately go to the dogfights, right? The Lone Aces, the Sopwith Camels, the Red Baron. But that's not the whole picture. Not even close. For every single one of those planes in the sky, there was this massive, almost invisible machine on the ground, just working around the clock to keep it flying. This is their story.
Right, so this is the image we all know and love. The dashing pilot, kind of like a modern knight in his leather helmet and goggles. He's always the star of the show, the hero, the ace. But while that's a great story, it kind of hides a much bigger and honestly a more amazing truth.
Get a load of this number, 22 to 1. That means for every one pilot in the air, there were 22 people on the ground making it happen. 22! We're talking mechanics, riggers, drivers, clerks, an entire army on the ground whose only job was to keep that one plane flying. The air war wasn't just one up in the clouds, it was one down in the mud and the chaos of the airfields.
So, to really get a feel for this hidden world, we're going to follow the journey of a guy we'll call Bill Wilson. He's based on the real accounts of countless mechanics. Imagine him, a skilled guy from Glasgow, who suddenly finds himself as a crucial cog in this giant war machine, the Royal Flying Corps. His story, really, is the story of all of them. Okay, so if you're going to build an air force, basically from scratch, in the middle of a world war, you need one thing more than anything else: people. And not just a few, you need an absolute ton of them. And just look at how fast things changed. In 1915, the Royal Flying Corps' need for people was, big, but you could manage it. Fast forward just 2 years to 1917, and they were desperate. They needed almost 600 skilled men every single month. The demand was just going through the roof.
Which brings up a huge problem, right? The army is already taking millions of men for the trenches. The factories making shells and guns need all the skilled workers they can get. So, where in the world do you find thousands of mechanics and electricians who aren't already spoken for?
Well, they got clever. They started looking where nobody else was. This table basically shows that in 1914, about a third of their recruits were outside that prime fighting age. But by 1918, that number jumps to an incredible 78%. They were taking the really young guys and the much older, more experienced men.
And this quote just nails their strategy. The RFC cared more about what was in your head and what you could do with your hands. They took guys the infantry had already rejected because, frankly, being able to fix a complex engine was way more valuable to them than being able to charge across no man's land.
And then it didn't stop there. The search went even wider. They started bringing in boys, some as young as 15 and a half, for apprenticeships. They formed the Women's Royal Air Force, the WRAF, and by the end of the war, 25,000 women were serving. They even raised the recruitment age all the way to 51.
See, this wasn't just about filling uniforms. It was a very targeted search for the right skills. It was about being pragmatic, creative, and finding people who could think on their feet and solve problems under unbelievable pressure. People exactly like our guy, Bill Wilson. So once they had this army of specialists, the next massive hurdle was figuring out how to build a supply system that could actually keep up with the front lines. A system unlike anything the world had ever seen.
This quote just perfectly sums up the sheer insanity of it all. In 1914, aviation was basically a hobby for rich guys with flimsy planes. 4 years later, it's a full-blown industrial system of warfare. That kind of jump, it's not just about building better planes, it's about a total revolution in how you organize everything.
Now, I know this looks like a kind of boring flowchart, but trust me, this is the secret sauce. This is the nervous system of the entire air war. This diagram shows how they got everything from a tiny screw to a whole new engine, all the way from a factory in England to a muddy field in France, right when and where it was needed most.
Let's just follow one little part on its journey. So it starts in a big warehouse in Britain. It gets shipped over to a massive base in France, sorted in another depot, then sent to a mobile unit called an aircraft park, which literally followed the army as it moved, and then finally it gets delivered right into the hands of the mechanics at the squadron. It's like a perfectly choreographed dance happening every single day in the middle of a war zone.
But this whole system wasn't just about being organized. On the Western Front, where everything was about grinding the enemy down, this logistical machine was actually a weapon. This was the battle behind the battle.
Okay, so check this out. During the Battle of the Somme, the Royal Flying Corps lost almost 1,000 aircraft, 972 to be exact. I mean, that is a catastrophic number. You'd assume that would completely knock them out of the fight. But here's the twist.
During that exact same period of devastating losses, the number of planes the RFC had on the front line actually went up by almost 400.
So, wait a minute. How does that even work? How on earth do you lose 1,000 planes but end up with 400 times more than you started with? It sounds completely impossible. The answer, and it's brilliant, was salvage and repair. To the RFC, a crashed plane wasn't trash. It was a gold mine of spare parts. Mechanics would literally run out to crash sites and strip them of engines, instruments, anything that could be reused. These parts would go to huge workshops that were like Frankenstein's labs for airplanes. They'd stitch together brand new planes from the wreckage of old ones. In 1917 alone, they rebuilt almost 900 aircraft this way. They turned their losses into a supply chain.
And the craziest part? This entire factory system was on wheels. These maps show the final push of the war in 1918. As the front line surges forward, look, the whole support network, the aircraft parks, the repair shops, it all just picks up and moves with it, leapfrogging forward to keep the planes flying. It was incredible.
So when you put it all together, what's the real legacy of this invisible army? What did the work of thousands of people, like Bill Wilson, actually achieve?
Well, it really all boils down to this: air superiority. It wasn't just about having the best pilots or the fastest planes. It was built on a foundation of logistics. The side that could repair and replace its aircraft faster than the enemy, that was the side that would win the skies. It was their secret weapon.
You know, the story of Bill Wilson and the ground crews is such a great reminder that behind every piece of amazing technology, whether it's a biplane from 1918 or the AI on our phones today, there's a whole network of skilled, dedicated, and often totally forgotten people making it all work. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Who are the invisible people, the forgotten engines behind the technology we all depend on right now?